One of the things that immediately comes to mind when I see your content on LinkedIn is how the hell does this guy crank out so much content? You're a beast, dude. So what's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce? How are you doing all this? Fill us in from the graphics, tools. How are you doing it?
Yeah, I'll share. I'm happy to share, and I'll break it down because I think there's like a couple different components. I will say right now, it's not like my system. Like I'll just like basically I just had a baby like 4 months ago, and a lot of the optimization just went to shit because that's what happens. You have like a big life change like that, and suddenly you have to like adjust, and so I'm still kind of um navigating that big transition and like still making adjustments and like finding my footing, if you will. Um, but before having my baby, I was definitely dialed, and I can walk you through what that used to look like um, before having the baby, because that's when I was like at my peak, and I'm trying to figure out the next version of that now with my baby. Would that work?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I guess maybe we start with the amount of output that I was producing every single week before my baby, and then we kind of work backwards in terms of like systems.
Yeah.
So, uh, for the longest time, I think it's been like 2+ years, I've been writing daily on LinkedIn. So typically, I write one LinkedIn post per week. Um, the amount of newsletters that I create every week has also been increasing. So I started with no newsletter when I originally started posting on LinkedIn. Then I started to do one per week, then two, then three. Now I'm doing daily. That has been one of the constants, by the way. So even though, or despite the big change of having a baby, I'm still writing daily emails. So that's kind of still part of the cadence. And then at some point, I'm not doing this at the moment because again, I'm kind of on maintenance mode, if you will.
Mhm.
But at some point at my peak, I was also posting in addition to to LinkedIn and my daily emails, I was also posting 2 to 3 Substack notes per day. Those would get repurposed as tweets, and then one new lead magnet per week on LinkedIn. So I don't know how many pieces of content that is. I think it's like 20 something.
That's a
Um,
lot.
yeah, but I can start to work backwards from like and reverse engineer the different pieces if you want. But do you have any before I do that? Any questions on that?
No, I mean it seems like there's a lot of output. I think what immediately comes to mind is like from an ideation standpoint, are you coming up with all 28 pieces of content like ideas, or are you taking some of those and like where does the ideas come from to be
Great
able to
question.
produce that much content?
Yeah, I'll tell you kind of the tactical side first, which is like usually the way I think about it is like short form content, whether it's Substack notes or the not short form, like medium form LinkedIn, is usually my testing ground. And so I use that to validate things that then can become bigger assets, like a longer form newsletter or a lead magnet. And so typically it can happen, but it's very rare that I create a newsletter or a lead magnet or just a longer form piece, even like a paid product. And it's not been validated already by some sort of like shorter form of piece of content, right? And so usually, uh, if you pay close attention, um, all of my lead magnets started as LinkedIn posts,
Yeah.
or a good chunk of them, or like as a Substack note, and so like that's usually the through line from like a tactical perspective. So I tried to not spend a lot of time on a unproven idea, if you will, if I'm trying to create a bigger asset. Now,
Mhm.
from a more like where do ideas come from perspective, I I probably have like four main like go-to sources for ideas. The first one is my journal. So every morning I have like I'm not, obviously I had my era where I had like my 3 hour morning routine. Luckily I'm over that era, but
That's gone now.
yeah, that's gone. But I still like to journal, even if it's like a couple of minutes every morning. And one of my questions, in my whole journaling process, which again is very simple, is what's one thing that I did, built, or worked on yesterday that I could write about today. And the origin of that question was the early days of me writing on LinkedIn. I had no systems or no backlog of anything when I started posting on LinkedIn. And so I was literally living paycheck to paycheck when it came to creating content. And so I just found or try to find a way to like constantly be looking for ideas. And so that little question in my journaling process was very helpful. And to this day, even though I do have like more of an abundance of ideas at this point, I still use it and I do find it very helpful. So that's one. The second one is my sales call transcripts. So my business is an agency. Naturally, I take sales calls for people who want to potentially work with me. That always ends up being like a wealth of like game and knowledge that I'm naturally sharing, because I'm a big believer in just selling by sharing the strategy and like helping people figure out like what they should do before they even tell you if they want to work with you. So that's the second source. The third source is, what's the third source? What's funny is that I wrote a piece about this and now I'm having a hard time remembering. But those two are definitely two of the bigger ones. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. So it sounds like the journaling, and then essentially the journaling and your experiences from sales calls, right? The content that you're getting from sales calls.
Yeah, and let me that's the beautiful thing about creating content, which is you can reference back your piece. Well, the other thing is if it's not social content and it's a bigger thing, I can do, or I do what I was just telling you before of going and finding, okay, let's take a look at my LinkedIn analytics and let's find my most popular or best performing posts, and let's expand those into like newsletters, lead magnets, pay products, etc. Yeah, those I would say are the kind of the three big ones.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. One of the things I also noticed is that you have these extraordinary graphics. Like, how are you how are you building these amazing graphics? Do you have a whole team of designers? Are you using some like AI tool? Like, what's going on there? And they're beautifully done. It's like everything's on brand. Like everything is clean.
Well, I appreciate that. The boring, simple answer is that ChatGPT has gotten pretty darn good at creating graphics, and so like I just use ChatGPT like transparently. Like I know there's like, well, at least there were some better image generation tools and like models like Midjourney, and like I didn't really get into any of those. I just found them too complicated. I didn't want to get into Discord, and so for a long time, I do feel like one of the things that I do well very naturally is packaging. And so when it comes to the packaging of my content, I have like, it's one of the like OCD things that I have, like where I do pay a lot of attention. I do want to make sure I'm doing a good job. And I typically spend like a disproportionate amount of time trying to nail that. But now with AI, it's much easier because I can just, give a decent instruction to ChatGPT, and it usually comes with comes up with a pretty decent output, and then we can iterate from there.
Okay. Yeah, that's I'm imagining that you had a bunch of minions designing behind you.
No, I do have, so back to your like maybe we can start to weave this into the bigger question, which was how do I create so much content? I do have somebody who helps me. I call it, I kind of created this role for this person. This person also happens to be my brother, my younger brother. Initially he started like my intern, but now he's like I call him my content growth operator, because he helps me kind of handle and manage all the different pieces that like moving pieces that go into creating all this stuff. And at this point, like usually I'm, if there's like a strategic thinking thing to do with like when we're creating a prompt or a part of the system, I'm usually very involved there. But once that part is running, he's usually the one executing that whole playbook.
Are you familiar with the framework of the 10-80-10?
That's exactly what I live by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're giving him the first 10% of the ideas. He's running and building some kind of prompt or system around that, and then the last 10% you're reviewing and kind of contextualizing.
Yeah, the nuance though is that that's not the case for every task. Like I personally, when I was at my peak content output, I was still writing most of my content. Like, and maybe okay, maybe this is also an interesting thing to dive into. But like at my peak, probably 80 to 90% of my LinkedIn posts every week were net new, and only like one or two, like 10% were repurposed. And so he would help me. Like there isn't a lot of like strategic thinking to be done, like maybe some, but not a lot. It's not super hard to like go and repurpose a existing post. All we have to do is like brainstorm some hooks, which I helped him create a prompt for, and then come up with a new potential image that we could use so the post fresh feels fresh. But even when that was the case, I was still writing most of my content. Sometimes I do have him like, if I have like a very good outline and a very good idea of what the post should look like, I can give him an outline and he drafts it against like
Mm.
our library of like posts that he can use as reference. But there's the idea is coming from me. The final QC I'm doing, because it's just very hard to fake, you know, like especially if in my case, I'm talking about for the most part about things that I'm doing, things that I'm working on, frameworks that I'm developing. It's like you cannot really outsource any of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So your brother kind of plays a junior content ninja role, like a
Yeah.
junior content ninja role.
Yes. And if anyone's curious, maybe your game to share in the like show notes or something. But I actually, of course, I created a lead magnet where I break down all the different ways where he helps me. There's like I think 14 different use cases that we listed out there.
Okay.
Um,
That'd be
every
great.
w- yeah, anything everything between my social content, my lead magnets, my newsletters, and a couple other things that he helps me with. But yeah, it's super. I kind of break down in detail how we go about it, the different systems that we have built around that specific task, and etc.
I love that. Let's talk about the agency. So I'm fascinated because you were prolific at writing. It seems like you were transitioned into launching this agency like
Mhm.
6 or 7 months ago, I think.
January.
It's already, I think, is it at 1 million run
That's
rate
the
yet?
goal. No, not
Okay,
yet. That's the goal.
not quite yet.
That's the
No.
goal. To get to in run rate by the end of the year.
Okay, by the end of the
We
year.
yeah, we're averaging 40K a month. So we
Okay,
still need to double. But it does feel attainable. It feels like a hairy but attainable goal.
I love it. And what's interesting to me is when I think of a newsletter, when I think of an agency, the biggest thing with agencies, right, is that there's always these back end obstacles, client delivery. So I'm curious, how are you managing that? Is there a team of people? Is there AI? What kind of systems are you guys using specifically around client delivery ops and like the sequences? Because if you're sending out emails, I'm sure that's like tons of sequences. Like you guys crank emails like it's nobody's business. So
Mm,
how are you doing all that?
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, well, to answer the first part, yes, there is a team. There's also AI in terms of the team structure right now. So there's me. Um, Luckily, I've gotten mostly out of the work. Still a few things that I'm helping the team with, but I have two writers who are contractors, and I have an account manager. That's my most recent hire. We hired him about a month and a half ago. He's a killer. He's doing an amazing job. Um, and so I'm still, you know, there's like as I transition out of as I transition out of the account manager role that I was playing before hiring him, I'm still like there's as I said, a couple of things that I'm still working on and doing and kind of passing on to him. Um, but he's like gotten up to speed very quickly. Now, obviously, each of our different team members, including myself, also uses AI for different things. Anything
Sure.
from like, or everything from like ideation and outlining to in my case, when I'm doing like more of the sales and marketing stuff, like creating proposals, like the stuff that I was describing of mining ideas from my sales calls. Like I have Fathom connected to my Claude MCP, and I can just chat and like reference all my sales call transcripts when I'm creating my content. Like all of like different things across the business, we're definitely using AI for. The the thing that you mentioned, interestingly, I think it's one of the things that has the less or has been the least impacted by AI, which is like the more like email ops side of things. I think in part because up until recently, most email service providers didn't have like an MCP that you could like actually build stuff with, like with Claude. Now
Right.
both Beehive and Kit do. Uh, on that side, I still haven't seen like a lot of like super exciting things. I still
Are you
think you can.
skeptical? Are you
I'm a little bit
skeptical?
skeptical there. I'm bullish still, and I'm hopeful. I still haven't seen like I don't think you can like build very complex workflows. At least with Kit, I haven't tried with Beehive. Just using
Sure.
like the Claude MCP. But at the same time, though, it's like one of those like in my before having the agency, I was doing all of this work myself for clients, for other people, for the company that I was working at full time. And so I have like so much pattern recognition and like reps building this kind of workflows that I can literally like create a an automation to deploy a sequence in like 2 minutes. And so it's usually not as time consuming as writing the emails themselves. That's usually what takes
Mm,
the most time.
love it. So the MCP, client delivery pattern recognition. Is there anything interesting or unusual that you feel like you guys are doing on the back end in the agency that maybe you haven't seen other agency owners do or use?
That's a great question. Um, well, first I should probably talk to more email agency owners to compare our workflows and have a better benchmark. I'll give you like a super nitty gritty specific use case that I found that I personally love because it saved me like 3 hours per week, and then maybe that'll sparkle
Yeah.
a couple of ideas. But as part of like one of the more time consuming things for me when I was playing the account manager role myself was just keeping track and communicating with all of our different clients. At our peak, I think we've worked with probably 12 to 13 people at the same time, managing it like or working on a combination of like one-off projects that have like very specific timelines, but also like ongoing retainer clients that basically need new deliverables every single week. And if you don't have like a if you're not organized and or you don't have a pretty good system to like keep tabs on all of that, it can be pretty overwhelming and it's pretty easy to like just get it over your own head. And so what I built and one of like the kind of the different tasks or like processes that went along with that was just communicating with clients at the beginning and at the end of each week. You can imagine how make it like recapping and drafting a message for every one of those clients twice a week can take a long time, especially because you have to go and check what you actually did, what the team worked on, what the deliverables are, what the status of the next thing
Yeah.
is. So it's a lot of moving pieces. And so
Sounds like a nightmare.
it was like a nightmare for me. I luckily built a solution. So the solution was I connected my Slack MCP and Notion MCP to Claude, and suddenly I was able to. Well, first, Claude could read all of our client conversations, and so throughout the week, if I had shared any updates with our clients, Claude could reference those. And so at the end of the week, Claude could tell exactly what had gone down or happened because it could reference the Slack channel. It could also look at all the things that we had created and worked on in Notion. And so
Yeah.
I got to a point where I had a Claude skill and a Claude conversation, and every week I would just go, okay, Claude, I want you to go ahead and draft. Obviously, I wasn't just blindly sending those messages without any QCing, but I had a template. I had it connected to all the different sources of data. And I was like, okay, Claude, go ahead and draft all the beginning of week or end of week messages for all of our clients. And then I would, once it drafted them, I would approve them, and then it would drop them as drafts in each Slack channel. And so I would just go into each channel, make sure it was good, to fix any formatting like issues that usually happen when you have like that kind of, Claude to Slack info transfer, and then I would hit send. And it went from something that was taking me, like, again, 2 to 3 hours a week, no exaggeration, because of this volume of clients that we were communicating with, to like maybe like 30 to 40 minutes total, like 20 minutes per session. So, and I could do that from the treadmill and actually get some steps in. And so, we even stack some calorie burning in there.
I love it. I love it. Good stuff, man. Let's talk about the email launch playbook. You guys launched 5 6-figure launch. You guys had 5 6-figure launches last year, or in 2020. Was this last year or 2026?
I think
700.
The post that you were referencing, I think that was up until May of this year. Yeah,
May of this year. So yep. 775K, maybe more now. 95% of the sales came from email. Tell me about this launch. Can you break down like the highlight? I know we probably don't have enough time to go into the nitty gritty, but at a high level, what made that work for somebody who wants to do something like that?
Yeah. So I'll give you, okay, I guess first I'll share some context on like what's the usual setup. Then I can share the high level version of the playbook. So the context is all of these different launches were new products. I do think a lot of what I'm going to describe can work for a product that you're launching multiple times over and over. But all of those products that we did this for this year were net new products. It was usually some sort of like live experience, like a 2-week bootcamp or a 5-day sprint, something along those lines. That's also just piece of context of all of what I'm going to describe. Also works for self-paced products, low tick, like it's very like offer agnostic for the most part. I just want to give you kind of the context. So, and the price point lastly was for the most part like $800, but again, it works for more expensive things, also for cheaper things. Now, what we typically do whenever we are getting ready to and planning on launching a product, we have 4 different sequences that we send. As you said, most of the revenue comes from our email list. Of course, we also make the occasional post and promote things on social. We might do a webinar, and like actually webinars, I think you're a webinar guy. Webinars are
yep. I am.
Definitely, especially as the price increases, can be extremely, extremely helpful. But we have found after years of doing this in multiple iterations that without a doubt, email is always the single highest ROI channel, just because you have direct access to your audience. You get to choose who sees your messaging, when, all of that good stuff. Now, in terms of the playbook, so usually it's like a 7-day cart, like open cart period, where you can buy the product only for those 7 days. Obviously, if you have an evergreen product that you want to continue to sell, you might want to like think about how to handle that. You can still have the 7-day open cart like window, and just make it where in the window there's like a discount or a bonus or something that will expire. But it's important to have that container of the 7 days, because otherwise there's no urgency for people to take action.
Scarcity.
Urgency and scarcity. But now during that 7-day period, we send 3 sequences, and then before that period begins, we also have one more sequence. So leading up to the opening of the cart, we have a pre-launch sequence that accomplishes 3 things. First, we build hype and anticipation. Second, we start to educate people on kind of the thinking, the methodology, the strategy that we are going to be helping them implement through the product later. So we're not talking about the product, we're talking about the frameworks, the strategies, the mindset shift behind the product that you need to kind of be on board with to even want the product in the first place. So we're doing a lot
Sure.
of like that preemptive work. And then the final thing that we're trying to accomplish there is build a waitlist, because that's objective data point that tells us, is there interest in this? There is no interest in this, But also, once the launch begins, having a waitlist gives us like another segment of higher intent people that showed their or raised their hand earlier, that we can retarget, if you will, with more and different emails. So that's the first part. Everything makes sense so far?
Yeah, 3 emails before the cart opens.
Well, we actually go up. It can be 3, but we go up to 7.
Oh, you can do up to 7.
Yeah,
So, and this is before you start the 7-day
correct.
like open cart. Yeah, that
Correct.
makes sense.
Yeah. So you can be anywhere. I wouldn't go less than 3, but anywhere from like 3 to 7, maybe 5 could be a sweet spot. But yeah, that's all happening before the car opens and before the product is even for sale. And again, the goal is to build anticipation, make it where it's no surprise that the product is actually launching. You want people to be ready to buy your thing when it's live. Then car opens, product is for sale. Once that takes place, we start to send 3 different sequences. The first one is a launch sequence that goes out first thing in the morning to everyone that we're pitching on the list, like every email subscriber who could be a good prospect for buying the thing. We send those emails to those people. That's when you start to talk about more about the product. You start to handle more objections. You start to like paint that picture of like what the prospect's life could look like 6-12 months from now, after they use the things that you're going to help them with, all of that good stuff. That's kind of the foundation, and that's what most people do, and that's great. Now, on top of that, we have 2 additional layers. The second layer is an objection handling sequence. So in the morning, or in the launch sequence, are the emails that we send in the morning, right? In the afternoon, we send those objection handling emails. But
How many
instead
emails in the? I'm sorry. How many emails in the morning? Is it just
it's
one or multiple?
it's typically 10 emails in that
10.
7-day period. In that 7-day period.
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
I was
so
like,
it's
damn, you send them 10 in the morning.
No. I wish. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's like mostly 1 email per day. Except like on the first day and this last day, we might send like an extra email, just because those are like peak engagement days. But it's mostly 1 launch email per day in the morning.
1 launch email per day, and then in that same like 7-day window, you're sending a second sequence on top of.
And that's what I'm about to describe. Yeah, that's the objection handling one. So if we send the launch emails in the morning, we send the objection handling ones in the afternoon. The difference, though, is that the morning ones go out to everyone. The afternoon ones only go out to people who either joined the waitlist in the first place. That's why it's so important. But also people who might have seen the launch emails. They might have clicked, but they didn't buy. So again, they showed some form of intent, but they haven't converted. And so in the afternoon, we just try to go after that segment of warmer, more engaged people, and we try to address any objections that they might have. And then the final layer here is an abandoned cart sequence, which is essentially, it's very similar to the objection handling, where we're only going after people who have clicked a specific number of times. It's usually 2 clicks before we trigger those emails. And then the only other difference is that those emails are like, so far I've been like, it's all very like in a very intentional and like almost like programmatic schedule, where it's like in the morning launch emails, in the afternoon objection handling emails. But the abandoned cart emails actually happen whenever somebody has clicked more than twice and they haven't bought. And so that's more like behavior based rather than time based, if you will.
Got it. Makes sense. And then, so when you say clicked, are you saying they clicked on the email to open or the product? Okay.
The email. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Love it. And then that's essentially it. That's the
playbook. And like most people don't do pre-launch, or if they do, like they send like an email or 2, and it's like, as you know, it's typically not enough. Then most people just do launch sequences. They don't do objection handling or abandoned cart. And then even when they do the launch sequence, that whole 10 emails in 7 days, like that scares most people. And like most people send like 3 to 5 emails in their whole like launch window. It's like they come back and tell me like, Daniel, I didn't get any sales. Why is that? And I'm like, well, either your offer sucked or you didn't send nearly enough emails. And
You
it's
didn't mail
usually,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, the same logic applies to webinars. It's like,
Hmm.
how many times can we hit them over the head
Yep.
if they've raised their hand
Yep.
without being, without going to spam or like pissing them
Hmm.
off? But we want to
Hmm.
be a little bit aggressive. And so far, you guys have closed with this email launch, this playbook that you've described. How much cash collected have you guys
That's a
closed
great
to
question.
date?
I actually haven't checked recently. Like I haven't done the math again of like the aggregate of all the launches. When I wrote that post that you're describing or referencing, we were at 700K. That was
Okay.
like around May or June. But I mean, like this, we perfected that playbook over probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
We saw our peak. Like the best result that we've gotten with it was Black Friday 2024, and we generated over 650K in revenue in just 7 days of like launching.
that's awesome, man. Yeah. No calls, no
No,
application.
because all of that
Yeah,
was all of those products have been just like direct to checkout because they're like less than $2,000 per
less than
a
2K.
pop.
Yeah.
You know.
So you don't need a salesperson on the phone. Love it.
Hmm.
Um Super solid, man. The next thing I want to talk to you about is a little bit about what your thoughts are on where newsletters are headed. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk right now around 2026 being the year that newsletters kind of get started to kind of take a nosedive, or the email delivery in that case, because the summaries, the AI summaries. Like, what's your take on this? Are you guys seeing this affect your business, the agency? And if so, how are you combating that and being on the offense versus defense?
Yeah, that's a great question. On the AI summary note, I was actually kind of freaked out when I first heard the news. Um, but like I'm not anymore. Like to be honest, like I personally don't really use the feature. I don't, and I'm like I live in my inbox as you can imagine, so I don't find it super helpful. What I found more helpful, ironically, is like having AI triage my inbox, like label emails that I need to pay attention to versus not. I think that's more of an interesting trend than the AI summarizing things. Um, but yeah, honestly, I haven't seen like also I haven't heard or seen a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not reading emails or newsletters anymore." At least for that reason, I do think there was like a lot of hype around newsletters, and everyone and their mom launched a newsletter. I think the problem with a lot of those newsletters was that there was no business around it, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think there are the way I think about it, there are two types of newsletters. There is a you can build a newsletter business, or you can have a conversion newsletter that's just a growth engine for your business. But the newsletter itself is not the business. And so what's the difference? Like the newsletter as a business is the hustles and the morning brews of the world, where the newsletter itself is like how you're monetizing through sponsorships, through ads, all of this stuff. The other and I think that's the kind of newsletter that a lot of people created, right? Like they didn't have a business, they launched a newsletter uh trying to just attract all this attention with the hope that then they could monetize that attention with sponsorships and ads. And then guess what? When everyone has a newsletter, it's way more competitive, way harder to monetize. But if you actually have a business and you're selling something that you own, a product or a service, and what you're doing is using email to just be more efficient with your marketing and get more of the leads that you're getting, then I don't think that's gonna go out of style anytime soon, because everyone who has a business probably can make more money and generate more revenue if they use email effectively. And so I actually feel like I'm actually bullish on email more than ever, and the reason why that is because a lot of people are getting good at social, and a lot of people are getting good at building audiences and generating attention and capturing attention. But most of those people have no idea how to like turn that attention into like revenue for their business.
Yeah.
And email is a very big important part of doing that. And most people don't know how to do email. And so in my opinion, it's actually like a kind of a golden era, I think, for people who know how to do email for that reason. And I'm not gonna lie, even though it's kind of a double-edged sword, because less people excited about a newsletter also means that potentially, right, I'm gonna have a harder time generating leads and whatnot for the agency. But at the same time, um that's also going to create, like, get rid of a lot of the competition, the people who were not serious about it, or they're going to pivot to the new shiny thing, and then we're going to be here owning the category.
No, I love it. Speaking of the agency, what type of companies do you guys work with?
Great question. So the unfortunate answer is that, like, most companies could do email, right? And if somebody, like, we've worked with a couple different types of businesses, like we've worked with SaaS businesses, agencies, but that said, our bread and butter is educational slash information businesses like ours, just because that's kind of where I learn most of this stuff.
Sure.
And a lot of, like, the more tactical aspects kind of translate to. But yeah, so that's kind of our bread and butter. We do have, as I said, a couple of, like, tangential different types of businesses that we work with, but for the most part, education businesses.
Talk to me about lead magnets. The way, just for context for the people who are out there who don't know who Daniel is, like, you'll figure out really quick if you haven't. But I've gotten like 25 of your lead magnets over over the last, like, course of a year, and you are prolific at being able to create lead magnets, and you don't have this what I would call, or what maybe you would call, is like this fatigue, right? Usually when people are doing a lead magnet, they're beating it to death. You have this ability to create, like, almost out of nowhere, these beautifully hard hitting, right in your face lead magnets. I mean, I got a ton of them in Notion to show you. What's your formula for being able to do that for the people that are listening? Because I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, great question. Well, first, deciding to do so, right? So for context, I started, as I said, I think in the beginning, I started writing on LinkedIn around 2 years ago. Back then, absolutely nobody was using or doing lead magnets on LinkedIn the way we're describing here as giveaways. That was, I think, already a thing on X. I think on X it was fairly common. Instagram probably so, but not on LinkedIn. And so having been on other platforms, I was like, why is nobody doing this? So I started doing it myself. I tried it. And then after I started to see some traction, my first instinct was, well, this is working pretty well. I'm just going to do it every single week. And so I think that, one of the reasons why, and don't get me wrong, like, a lot of my I've probably created like 70 lead magnets over the past 2 years. And, like, a lot of them haven't worked as well, but
Sure.
given that I committed to, like, for a long time doing them not daily, that would be crazy, weekly, I've been able to, like, get a lot of the benefit of, like, the 80-20, where a handful of them have driven, like, pretty big outlier results, and a lot of them have done decently well. But I think, back to your question, I think the lesson there is, like, once you find something that works, in this case lead magnets, double down, commit to doing it more often until it doesn't work anymore, because the arbitrage, guess what, it's gonna be gone sooner than later. So capitalize on it. The second thing is, over time, I kind of developed, like, different, like, basically a framework to come up with ideas. My whole thing is, like, how can I reduce the risk of the lead magnet flopping, right? And so what I do is I just try to find ways to get signal of something, or a topic, or an angle that's already worked, and then I double down on it. And so one of the easiest ways for anyone to just find pre-validated lead magnet ideas is to look at your content analytics. Look at
Mm,
what you've posted over the past 30, 60, 90 days. What are the 3, 5 outliers? There is a chance that those, sometimes not if you're shit posting, but if you're like sharing tactical stuff, chances are there is a piece or two that you could expand into a bigger asset, and it's usually adding more content, more examples, more informations, making it easier for people to implement with like templates, scripts, AI prompts, Claude skills now. So that's kind of the easiest thing that you can do is just go to your analytics, find two or
sure.
three tactical posts that perform well that you could expand, and then you literally just go to Claude, and then you work with Claude on expanding the post into a bigger thing that's more meaty, it's more meaningful. And then if you want to obviously get the benefit of the whole strategy, you launch it on LinkedIn as a giveaway, where you basically offer free access to the resource in exchange for people kind of leaving a comment and engaging with it.
Something else that's interesting here because you might be underselling this. When you do the follow up, one of the things, I don't know if you
Yeah.
have your team or a brother, one of the
Yeah.
things that you and Nathan do that I love, I stole this, is when you post it, you'll go, "Hey, I'll DM you, right? Follow me." So I follow you, then you DM me, and then you say, "Hey, let me know if the link works."
Yeah, it's super subtle. I stole that from a DM setter who was like a killer. I stole that, and the whole it's super interesting because it creates like a little curiosity loop for people to like, oh, hold on, does the link work? And so they go in there, not always, but they're usually more likely to go and actually sign up to just to see if it actually works. And I do get a lot of responses from people saying either they're just confirming that they did get it, or they're like, oh, that's a smart way to get a reply. So that's the other benefit. If you are using this kind of like strategy for lead gen because you sell something high ticket and you want to get conversations in the DMs, that's another great way to like get conversations going.
Yeah, no, this is I this is how you came into my world. So I
Mm.
didn't want to undersell that. It's a
Yeah.
super
Well,
slick tactic.
if you don't want to undersell it, I'll tell you. So over the past 2 years, I went from 600 LinkedIn followers to almost 40,000 now, and my email list went from like slightly over 1,000 to, I mean, with the churn, like I've probably gotten like more than 15,000 email subs. Right now, it's like at 12,000, just because over time people also unsubscribe.
Sure, sure.
Um, and 80+% of that growth has come from this single tactic. Obviously, the foundation is like I write LinkedIn posts every single day, but this has been like the outlier, like growth lever, if you will.
Yeah, I love it, love it. One other question, and then we'll jump into one by one. The are you doing a daily newsletter to draw to like basically drive traffic to the email agency?
Hmm. And
And
that
they're short, punchy like email. Like what's the
the
framework
length,
behind that? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, first, I'm a very extreme like white or black guy in the sense like it's like I find it easier to do something daily than once per week, just because it's top of mind and it's just the habit of it.
Repetition. Yeah.
Yeah, I also like I one day, this was like a decision that I made like 3 or 4 months ago. I was like, you know what? I have like all these ideas, the like super tactical things that I know about email that I don't see a lot of people talking about that I would love to share. And I was like, I've like one of the annoying things that I don't, not annoying, but like one of the things that I don't like about LinkedIn is that they don't really reward volume like Twitter does, for example. And so you can only really make one LinkedIn post per day, and then otherwise you just get like way like super big diminishing returns. It's like not really worth your time posting more than
Sure.
once your per day for the most part. And so I was like, in addition to my daily LinkedIn cadence, I want another like medium for me to like share all these things that I want to share. And I also need more leads. And so I decided to start the daily newsletter for that reason. I am a big believer of having like a very specific format for anything that I'm doing, because constraints are usually your friend when it comes to like creating content. Um,
Always.
and so my framework for that email is, it's even clear in the name. So the name of the newsletter, now I even rebranded the whole thing. It's called Daily Email Tactics. So the premise is every single morning you're gonna get a tactic from me that's either gonna help you grow or make more revenue from your email list. Very simple and clear. And then the format is three simple parts. So I explain the tactic. I introduce and explain the tactic that I'm sharing. I give you three reasons why I like the tactic or I think it's worth for you to try it. And then at the end, most of the time, sometimes I get lazy and I don't do it if I'm like running late. But most of the times I also include an example for like the tactic that I'm describing, so you can see it in action. So that's the format. That's kind of why I decided to launch that, and I'm honestly loving it. I feel like I might, get tired of the format at some point, maybe at the end of the year or something. But at the end, I'm gonna be extremely happy because I'm gonna have like a library of like, I don't know, 200 tactics that I've explained that I can then turn into a lead magnet. I can turn
Yeah.
into a book. I can turn into a product. So that was another kind of reason why I was excited about the format, because it was gonna force me to like put out all of this information, get it out of my brain, and then it's gonna be a lot of IP that I can do more things with.
Yeah, it's a great forcing function, and I really enjoy the format. It's short. You can read it like in 5
Hmm.
minutes. It's super
Yeah.
super digestible. Let's jump into the one by one before we head out. So this is the segment that I ask all the guests, and it's basically one book that you recommend or gift often,
Yeah.
one quote that resonates with you, and then one room that has impacted your life in any kind of way. It doesn't have to be the room; it could be any room.
Okay. When you say the room, do you mean like metaphorically, like a room of people, or
It could be both. It could be a physical room, or it could be
a,
metaphorically a room.
okay,
Like,
interesting.
yeah,
I like that one. I'll start with the book. I actually had to look it up because I didn't remember the title. But are you familiar with Scott Adams? He passed away unfortunately a few months ago, earlier this year. But he was the creator of Dilbert, the comic.
I've heard of
Yes,
this.
he's
Yeah.
a legend. He's written many books, but I love a book that he wrote that's called How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. Um, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of like self help and like self improvement books is like the same idea as packaged in different ways, and I think to an extent that was also true with this one, but he also had some very interesting novel ideas that also happened to kind of hit me um the right time. And so I love his writing style. I was also like in a very like, it was like a moment, like a like a rock bottom moment for me when I found that book, and I just found it very inspiring and like gave me a lot of like hope that I could actually go and do better stuff with my time and my my mind.
Oh yeah, awesome.
That's the
And the
book.
quote.
Yeah, the quote. I think two that I come back to often. The first one is, if information was the problem, we'd all be billionaires with perfect apps. Um, I love that one when I'm selling. I'm not gonna lie, because people often forget that accountability is kind of the most important aspect of a lot of the things that you buy online these days. But it's also true for yourself when you're trying to make a
Yeah,
change or
with
something.
anything, going to the
You know?
gym, being
Yeah,
married, right? Take your
yeah.
pick.
The other one, the last one that I'll just share a bonus one is, it's this one's kind of cheesy, but it's a Six Siglar quote, and it's if you, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's essentially, if you really believe in what you're selling, it's your moral responsibility to like do your best job to sell it. And I think the reason why I love that one is because a lot of people, myself included, like hide on their educational content, and they want to give free value and give free value and free value, and sometimes we forget we're building a business. And sure, you want to serve your customer and be helpful, but there's nothing wrong with selling things, especially if the thing that you're selling is helpful. So I just try to remind myself and other people of that pretty often.
Yeah, Yeah, I love Zig's old school stuff. He has a great book called what is that Zig book called? It's back here. The Secrets to Closing the Sale. If you ever
Oh,
want to, so my mentor, a guy who I know you recently wrote about, um, he taught me the book on webinars. He basically taught me
Jason?
everything. Jason, yeah, Jason Flat. So Jason Fladlin learned all of his sales game from like that's the book. He was like, if there's one book that you would buy, it's that Zig Ziglar book,
I
The
need to
Secrets
read
to
it now.
Closing the Sale.
I need to read it now.
It's dude, it's the bomb. Like it's the bomb. So shout out to Jason Fladlin for that.
He's
And
awesome.
then
Yeah.
The Room. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay, The Room. I think it's probably a Slack channel uh, where I spent most of my time online over the past 5 to 6 years with my now business partners, Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole. Um, yeah, they're the founders of Ship Theory for Theory, the Premium Ghostwriting Academy, and a bunch of other programs and offers out there in the online writing world. But yeah, I was telling you before we started recording, I took their first program before it was really a program. It was like a writing challenge originally. I participated in the first version. I loved it. Saw a lot of potential in it. I called DM my way into becoming the first team member before there was a team. Did pretty much not every role, but like a lot of the different roles that were required as the company grew, from like freaking community manager to like operations person. I built like in a previous life, I built like 500 Zapier automations. Like, and I'm pretty good at that now. All the way until becoming their head of marketing, and then ultimately starting the agency with them back in January this year.
Congrats, dude.
Yeah.
That's if anybody hasn't figured it out yet, this is why I have this guy on the podcast. He hustles. So yeah.
I like to hustle. I'm an immigrant, and when you're an immigrant, that's usually the shortest way to like find success. So there you are.
Respect.
Yeah.
Respect. Any last words before we wrapped up? I know we covered a lot. We talked about the content machine that allows you to crank out the goodness that you do. We talked about the AI backend behind the systems for the AI the newsletter business that you guys are running. We talked
Yeah.
about the email launch playbook. We talked about lead magnets. I think we pretty much covered everything, dude.
It's packed. It's a great episode. I'm excited. I was looking forward to it. And no, man, I just appreciate you and the invitation, and hopefully a lot of people get a lot of value from it.